So as the holidays approach, I thought now would be a good time to share with you what I did in social situations when it came to my food allergies. If you're new to this channel, my name is Cindy. I go by the pen name of Cindy What If, and I share with you what I discovered on my journey of overcoming chronic fatigue. And today we're going to talk about food allergies and the holidays. This is my disclaimer. This is not medical advice. I am just sharing with you my journey and my experiences in a way of hoping that you, at the very least, will know that you're not on this journey alone. The first thing that I obviously would do is I would make sure that the known allergen foods, or the foods that I was reacting to, whether they were inflammatory foods or actual allergies, I would make sure I did not eat those foods. I would eat before I would go to wherever we were going, just to not be tempted, which is funny because I was never tempted because the reactions were always so severe. There was no food could taste good enough to justify the amount of pain or nausea or those other symptoms for eating it. And so that wasn't really a problem for me, but for other people who I'd come into contact with who had food allergies as well, that's something that they would do. Something else that they would do is sometimes they would bring their own food, and they would coordinate in advance with the person who's throwing the party and explain to them the situation if it was in like a meal. And so that, because you got to remember that even though the food is such a big part of the celebration, it's not the reason for the celebration. And so just because you're not eating the same foods as other people doesn't mean that you're not a part of what's going on. And the other thing that I would do is, if it wasn't a meal, but it was just like snacks, I would just try to avoid awkward situations. If somebody offered me food, I would say, yeah, I'll have some in a little bit, not right this minute, or change where you're at in the party so that you're never around the same person, so that they won't realize that you're not eating. And if you can't avoid that at all, sometimes I would go ahead and I would take the food, but then I would hand it off to other people I'm talking to. Hey, here, try this. And there you go. Just some of the little tricks that I used to do when I couldn't eat the food that was provided. But that's kind of frustrating. That's not an ideal situation, but at the time, and we don't function on ideal. We function on the best of the best possible situation we can handle at the time. All of that was before I knew about DISH. But when I realized DISH and the difference that DISH can make, there was other precautions I could do in order to reduce the odds of having a reaction to my food. And it enabled me to partake more often. And this will sound crazy to you unless you understand what I share with DISH. DISH stands for Defensive Individual Shield Hypothesis. And what it is it's a shield that is on the surface of our skin, and it's a pre-sorting system for the lymphatic system and nervous system combined. It's a complementary system that helps us to know and distinguish good guy from bad guy. That's what it is in a nutshell. If you would like to know more about it and understand the magnitude of it, I have a course that I'll include down below that's DISH 101, and it explains the scientific principle behind it. It gives you a case study and explains the whole process of what it does and how impactful it could be. With that in mind, just like Einstein said, any mass has a frequency to it. And so when you think about food, the food you're receiving on your plate, it had to come from somewhere. It was cooked someplace, and all those possibilities, as we know, like aluminum and nonstick coating and things like that, they get onto the food, and then it's something else the body has to process out. Well, if you think about the pre-sorting, by being aware of the different ways food could be made, what I did before I would go someplace is I would take a small piece of saran wrap or plastic wrap. I would take a small piece of aluminum foil. And if I had a nonstick coating pan around, I eventually got rid of it. But when I had one, I would rub a little bit of a napkin on it, and I'd put those three things in my pocket. And then sometimes in my back pocket, sometimes in my front pocket. It didn't really matter. But if I was starting to feel symptoms, I would change the location of where I was holding it. And then the other thing I would do is any supplements or any medicine that I was taking at the time, I would keep it in my purse. And by doing that, I could, if I felt my dish going down, and I would go get my purse and I would just stick my hand inside my purse, hold on to those for a time being. Sometimes it was only 5 to 10 minutes, and then I could let go of it and I could go about the evening again. With those items in tow, once I arrived to the party, whenever I was going to eat any of the food that I was given, I would always make sure that I kept a small piece of it in a napkin, and I would add that to my pocket as well. It's amazing the difference that it can make when you're manually doing what the dish's job should be doing. And so those are some things that I did. The cool thing about dish and food allergies is that I did actually get rid of all of my food allergies. In fact, I am no longer allergic to gluten or casein, which is milk. And that even baffled my doctor, because she said, once allergic, always allergic. And we ran the test, and she was baffled. She's like, I have no idea how I can help you, because she was convinced it was because I had started eating gluten again. Anything about dish is that for other methods, it's like you have the reaction and then you have to deal with the reaction. Whereas with dish, you could do stuff in advance and it's usually avoided the reaction from happening at all. This is very surface level, and so this is not medical advice, but that is the process behind it. And I'm working on trying to figure out a way to make it more common knowledge and more in depth to help those who want to know more. And so if you want to sign up for my wait list for that course, that's also down below as well, and it's called After, Altering Fields to Enable Recovery. I think the reason for the food allergies, because food is supposed to be our medicine. We shouldn't need other medicine. But we do, because if we're allergic to the food and we need the nutrients that are in that food, do we stay stuck? And so I actually have a blog already written that's on my website that I'll include down below as well. I'm trying to give you as many resources as possible that explains how I ate when I had many food allergies. And by doing this process, I was able to get rid of all my food allergies. So there is a way that I found to get through social situations when food was involved. I hope you are able to come up with your own ideas of what to try in your situation when you have to deal with food in social situations when you have a food allergy. I would love to hear what you try. Put it in the comment below, please.